Alright, welcome back. Today's video is going to be focusing on the second, nuclear bomb in my life and how it, I would say, immediately impacted me. And then also just, again, I'm just kind of going through these painful events more just as a means to, one, just kind of get the idea about how to talk about your pain. Because, I think that there's a fine line between talking about your pain, just to give it a voice and to heal, and then also trying to get attention. And I think that's one of the reasons why for so many years I didn't say anything, was that I just didn't want people to get the wrong impression. I didn't want them to think that I was talking about my pain for attention or pity. It was just simply a matter of experience. That's really the thing that intrigues me about pain, was realizing that I think that that's in one of the ways that we can connect and we could feel a sense of community is talking about our own pain and realizing how other people have been through extremely painful events similar to our own, and how we reacted and how they react and so forth. But like I said, I feel like because of the stigma of mental health and how it's addressed, and again too, that I think a lot of times you'll see people being ridiculed when they come forward about their pain. That's what alienates and discourages people coming forward, so they think they're going to be judged. And so again, I just want to talk about my pain, and to be able to connect with other people who have been through similar pain, so that they can know that when I'm talking about something, I'm not talking about it because I just studied a bunch of books, which I did study psychology in college. But as far as my know-how and my understanding of pain, is it's come from experience and knowing my own pain, knowing how tragedy has affected me, and then observing other people and how it's affected them has really kind of helped me develop theories and develop correlations, connections. And that's how my mind works, is it looks for patterns. So just yes, move on to that second nuclear explosion in my life. So like I said, this was, I think, about 7 years after my twin brother was killed. And at the time, and again, I think how tragedy works, and I think that's the tough thing about losing a child, is I think a lot of couples that lose children end up getting divorced because the trauma is so raw and so personal that they tend to find gaps and not be able to connect with one another, because as one seeks to mourn, the other one might seek to suppress it. So there's this constant, like I was talking about with this concept of my way is the best way. I think that's, I say I've been married for over 10 years, and so I know that that's one of the huge tensions between marriages, is this sense of my way is the right way, as we all think our way is the right way, when in fact there are many ways that can work. But especially when you're dealing with raw pain and emotion and irrational thinking drawn on by that pain, I think that that's what leads to a lot of dysfunction in marriages when they lose a child. So anyhow, it's just something to be aware of, because like I said, I was not very on alert for my own pain, and it did cause some deterioration of relationships. But so that was going on with my parents. My parents were, I won't say they were specifically getting divorced yet or anything, but there were definitely tension and definitely gaps between the relationship, as far as they weren't I would say they weren't especially close. Their marriage was going through a lot, at least my brother. And so about 7 years after he was killed, that was all going on, and I'd been aware of it for, I want to say, a few months. But anyhow, so at the time, that fateful day, my wife and one child at the time were visiting my in-laws in Northern California, and I was home alone, which I gotta admit was pretty cool. Pretty cool, feeling like a quote-unquote bachelor again, having the house to myself and just being able to chill with my friends and what have you. But so I got a text message, mass text messages. It was to me and to most of my siblings, at least I say the ones that are out here in Montana, saying, please come to my parents' house, that there's something urgent that we need to talk about. And it was extremely ominous, because it was the same house that my brother was killed. They lived in the same house, and so it was the same drive, so to speak. It was the same road and the same thoughts. Like I said, I was by myself in the vehicle, driving to my parents' house, expecting, and what I was expecting when I saw it was I was expecting to hear my parents were getting a divorce. Which, obviously there are worse things in the world, but obviously, going away from what I knew, going away from my family and the dynamic that we had prior to all that, was very discouraging because, my sense of family and that connection to my past, specifically to my twin, meant a lot to me because, this is the same household, the same parents, the same siblings that I shared with my twin brother. And so having that together was the closest thing to having my twin back, other than talking to myself. I talk to myself a lot because my brother and I were just so alike that talking to myself is the closest thing to talking to him. But anyhow, so I was driving home, and then I pull in, and because of the information I received, everything how it played out, I don't fully remember. I just remember getting out of my truck, and I want to say a few of my sisters were outside. I think 2 or 3 of them were, and my dad was outside as well. And I want to say it was the sister right below my brother and I, but I can't fully remember. But she, again, I think they were all crying, and again, I thought I was going to be told they were splitting, which I wasn't happy about, but wasn't the end of the world. I'm an adult, but that's when I found out from that one sister. She told me that my father had sexually molested one of my little sisters, and I think it was, as far as the shockwave emotion, it was probably in the same echelon as my brother dying. As far as I don't know, that scene in movies when you see that person lose their loved one and that everything around them just goes still and goes out of focus. That's exactly how I felt. Was just kind of how, like, I'd gotten hit by a mine or something. I'd like my body had just been riddled with bullets. Like, the next step to do was just to hit the ground and not get up. And I just remember, tears getting in my eyes and just kind of shaking my head, and I tried to leave. That was my first instinct. Like, when my brother was killed, I tried to get away from it. I climbed back into my truck, and I just kind of shook my head back and forth and said, "We're not going to make it. We're not going to make it through this." Because that was what I learned from my twin brother's death, was that any pain is capable of happening. If I could lose my twin brother, I can lose anybody. And then after finding out what my dad had did, I learned that anybody could be the source of your pain, and anybody can cause you that immense self-destruction. I don't want to say self-destruction, that immense destruction in your life, that nuclear fallout, to where nothing's ever going to be the same. It's not going to not even close. And I know that things change in life, but when you lose everything that connects you to your past, when you lose everything that connects you to all of your good memories, it's really hard not to feel just like throwing your hands up and be like, all right, that's it. I'm just gonna wait for my ticket, but I'm not gonna try to act like this is okay. I'm not gonna act like somehow this isn't gonna just F me for the rest of my life. And that's getting that news and finding out about what happened and who hurt my little sister. That caused me to go into a deep depression. And my twin brother's death was the most painful, but sadly, what my father did was the most damaging. I lost all of my faith in any type of humanity, any type of if your loved one, if somebody who's supposed to protect you can do that to you, then anybody can do it to you. I've been married, so it's just really, how I put it was my twin brother. I know we all seek trust in life. We all seek to have people that we can trust, have our back, and the more they have our back, the more we feel secure about that. The more we can walk tall and not be worried that someone's going to come up from behind, because we know that we have that, at least that one person that's going to get our back. and which that's who my twin brother was. It was effortless. I didn't have to work for my twin brother's trust. I didn't have to, um, I don't know, say evaluate his behavior and so forth. It was just something that came with breathing, with your heart beating. It was just something that my twin brother and I had since birth. And I think it was just because we discovered life, from the second we were in the womb and were conscious of it. We just discovered life together, and so that gives that sense of trust. That we both knew each other, and we knew each other had each other's best interest at heart, wholeheartedly, unquestionably. And so, yes, my trust in life, my trust in this world, was all but shattered. It was definitely broken in many ways, but that was one of the things that I spent 5 years just not thinking I could be happy. Just accepting the fact that I was just going to be miserable, and just to try to not be the next. That was the thing that I would cycle through my head for years and years after that, was just don't be the next hand grenade. Just don't ruin everyone else. I just gave up on the fact that I could ever be happy, but I tried my best not to make anybody else miserable. And again, it's just, we're all going to screw up. And so again, when I would screw up, when I'd be inconsiderate or say something offhand and kind of jerky, I'd feel immense guilt and self-loathing because of it, because I knew how bad it felt to have someone close to you hurt you, and I didn't want to do that. And so, so that was the second nuclear bomb in my life, and that was kind of the thing too that I learned. And again, it's just kind of, that's one of the things that I find is just immensely interesting, and also just kind of, I feel like the answers to psychology, to pain, to depression and such, I think it's out there. I can't remember who it was that said this, but it's like all things that were true have been true. We just didn't discover them. They were always there. We just didn't know it. And so that's one of the things that I wholeheartedly believe, is I think that we have all the knowledge and understanding and wisdom out there. It's just a matter of learning it ourselves and learning how to apply it, and not just trying to chalk things up and all bad things happen to all people, but why do bad things happen to all people? Can we prevent them? Can't we? If we can't prevent them, how can we make the best of them? It's just we need to try to answer those questions, and that's one thing I realized too with my father, was that sense of, my wife, she's gotten into watching a lot of, I'd say 2020 and other homicide type things where they're true stories, and that's one thing I avoided for years and years. For the last year or so, I've actually started watching them, and I find it quite interesting. But one of the common things I see, and I'm not disagreeing with the sentiment they're saying, that a lot of people, I say, and all of them, there's always at least a handful of people reiterating that the person was killed for nothing, that there was no reason, that it was just pure evil. And I don't disagree with the concept that it was pure evil, but I do, I want to say, discourage the term of saying there's no reason, because that's one thing I learned with my own personal pain like that, of somebody you love hurting you and hurting someone close to you, is that obviously there had to be a reason, otherwise they wouldn't have acted. It wasn't a good reason. There's no good reason to do this type of heinous act towards another human being, whether it's rape or molestation or killing somebody. There's no good reason, but there is a reason, because that reason is what makes you act. And so dismissing it and saying that there's no reason makes it so you're not looking for an answer, not looking for how can we prevent this from happening. So that's one of the things that struggled for years and years after it, but I was able to slowly piece together kind of how could somebody do an evil like that, especially after they had evil done upon them. After my father, when he was 15, he lost his father, and then he ended up losing my brother, my twin brother, and so and there's several other seriously damaging things that happened to my dad, and so that's one thing I realized, was that none of us are above that sense of evil getting to us. But it's just a matter, again, of being vigilant, of being aware of our actions. And again, especially not justifying how we may hurt somebody because of our own pain. I'm not allowed to hurt other people just because I've been hurt. I'm not allowed to say, oh, I called you a name, or I said, I'm not allowed to be incourteous or a jerk to people just because I've lost my twin brother. It's a serious pain. I can't just be like, I flipped you off in traffic, but I lost my twin brother, so that's nothing. I could flip you off every single day, and it still wouldn't. It's dwarfed in comparison to what's happened to me, and so. But I feel like that's kind of that mentality of allowing yourself to hurt people and justifying it because of your own pain is what leads to people committing even more evil acts. And that's again why I say we need to discourage this labeling of mental illness and depression and mental unhappiness is to being all one type, because that's to me that's one of the factors that leads to people doing horrible things, is that they're put in a box and they don't want to be labeled as this type of evil, because there's like I said, I think most of us commit these mild selfish acts. And we justify them by how we've been dumped on in life by other people. It's that misery loves company concept. But there comes a point when you cross a line mentally, and then you start putting it into action, and then you start justifying that action based on your own pain. And I think that's what breeds, shocking evil when you find out that these. When you watch these shows, and these true shows based on family men and women who snap and they murder their spouse, or they murder their kids, or whatever, they commit these evil acts to loved ones, and we all shake our heads and say, why, how? But it's without actually digging deeper and truly looking for that why, that answer to that why, that I think is out there. I do think with some people that there is that sliver percentage of people that are utterly pure evil. Those Hitlers, those Stalins, those people that commit genocide. Those people exist, and there's no one action, two actions. It's not like Hitler got flipped off in track too many times to where he just was like enough and started going crazy. It was he was saturated in evil. He let his heart go to the devil, and he embraced it. But it was interesting, because I say I like a lot of movies, and one movie that movie quote that really resonated with me with this, what I've been talking about with my father and such, was from Batman: The Dark Knight, and it was I want to say it was Harvey Dent before he became Two-Face. I can't remember who he's talking to, but I love this quote, and it's a perfect way to look and be self-aware of life and of tragedy. And he said, "We either die the hero, or we live long enough to become the villain." And it just gives me chills to how true that was. And what I saw that happen with my father was that I realized that he had allowed his pain to wear him down and to saturate his heart to where he was capable of doing something like that. And again, in the movie, that's what happens, is that the character ends up being so hurt and distraught. The only person he loves really in life ends up being killed, and he gives his heart over to evil, and becomes the villain. And it just makes me sad, because that's not. I mean, like I said, not all villains were once heroes. Some of them are pure evil and are been villains in their hearts for no end. But a lot of people before they cross over, it's to where they've just had so many things go wrong in their lives that somehow they've continued to justify their selfish thoughts. And not to say that it's wrong to be selfish sometimes. We do need to look out for ourselves and to give into our needs. But like I said, even if life pushes us down, that doesn't give us the right to push others. That doesn't give us the right to inflict evil and pain on others. And again, that's why a lot of times it just keeps going and keeps going, and things get worse, is because so many of us have had tragedy strike us, and so we strike tragedy in others, even if it's small, even if it's insignificant in comparison to our own pain. We just need to be aware of trying to correct it and trying to keep that in check. Like I said, none of us are going to bat 1,000. None of us are going to get a perfect score, but I think we should every day try to do better. If you scored an 81 at the test yesterday, maybe try to get an 85 today. That type of mentality where you just need to seek improvement, like I said. And I feel like so many of us think that we need to get perfection. And so a lot of times we try to justify our actions to manipulate the situation. So we got 100 on the test when in fact we didn't, and so we're constantly in that cycle of trying to justify our behavior because in fact the paper still says 81. Rather than just realizing, the only way that test is going to get better is if I get better, and the only way I can get better is if I give myself realistic goals. You can't change yourself overnight. My slip in depression, how my pain changed how I looked at life and how I behaved on my knee-jerk reactions was not overnight. The next day after my brother was killed, I wasn't, just losing my mind with pain and such. These things didn't, it was different, but it took years and years and years of my pain deteriorating with me being unaware before it really changed my knee-jerk reactions, my habits, and how I approach things. So again, it's about self-awareness and self-reflection, and not giving yourself too much of a time, but also not giving yourself too much of a break. This is one thing I've learned about life, is it's about balance, and we have to constantly strive to seek balance. Not like I said, none of us are going to be perfect, and I think allowing yourself not to be perfect, while at the same hand keeping yourself in check and not allowing yourself to step on other people is very important. Not just for everyone else, but even for yourself. But yes, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to talk about with this type of pain, with somebody close to you hurting you, and how you can cope, and how that type of pain and that incident, what took place, was a whole nother different type of alienation that really, it was like alienation on steroids. My brother dying and me feeling that people around me were forgetting, or at the very least moving on. Whereas I felt every day like I was in that church service. That was alienating. But what happened with my dad, that was a whole nother scale. But that's a different conversation for another day. But as always, good luck and good night.